You are listening to the Novel Writing Podcast, episode 206. Grab a cup, cozy up, and let's get to writing. Today I'm talking with Dave Chesson, founder of Kindlepreneur, and several other popular tools that indie authors use like Atticus and Publisher Rocket. Dave is a military vet, a total book nerd, husband, and a father. He's worked with best-selling authors like Ted Dekker, Orson Scott Card, and more, and even Amazon has recognized his book marketing strategies. I'm really stoked to talk with you today, Dave, so thank you for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
So tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and how you got into helping authors.
Yeah, well, I never really thought that I was going to be an author myself. I grew up with dyslexia before it was more of a well-known thing. And so I always struggled when it came to English class. Matter of fact, I was hoping for a B in English class. When I got to college, I actually chose physics. I went as far away from writing as possible. But it doesn't mean that the story inside of you dies off. And so years later, I was in the military and I was deployed to the other side of the world. And, my wife had a really good question. She's like, "Hey, Dave, is this really what you want to do? Is this do you want this career? Is this mission in your life?" And I was like, "No, I'm just kind of going through the motions." She's like, "Well, then maybe we should look at you finding something to do that allows you to be home." And so when you're on the other side of the world, what exactly can you do? Right. And with my background, I just leave the military to join one traveling 9 to 5 job, for another. And so what was beautiful about the opportunity in publishing books was that I could do it from anywhere. As a matter of fact, I wrote my first book on a South Korean warship. I brought my laptop with me. We were out on mission and I was writing away. What was great about it was that I could launch my books on Kindle Direct Publishing, and Amazon would take care of all the logistics. I'm in Korea. It's not like I could be up at night, while Americans are awake and take care of orders or deal with, customer complaints or anything. So it was a wonderful opportunity. So I started writing books. The thing was that I wasn't this amazing writer like, an Ernest Hemingway or anything. I couldn't just write about anything. And so I started to look and say, okay, what if I approach Amazon as not just a place that sells books, but as a place to learn about what is hot and new and trending, why. And then after I started to get into understanding Amazon, I then started to look at, well, okay, what makes Amazon do what it does? Why does it choose to show this book over my book? What can I do to influence that? And so as I got into really analyzing Amazon as a marketplace, that's where Kindlepreneur was developed, where I just started writing about everything I learned, all the tests and the experiments I did and what I saw occur, and then, some of the best practices. And so, yeah, and that's really how I got into it. The best part about it was that I was able to make more money from my books than being a lieutenant commander in the Navy. And so I was able to get out of the military, and I've been home, kind of a work at home, be with the kiddos kind of dad since. So it's been absolutely wonderful.
That sounds awesome. Most people know Kindlepreneur either from your website or from the YouTube channel, which Zach Diamante recently
Mhm.
took over doing that. What is the essence of Kindlepreneur as an author tool? So if an author lands on the website, what should they expect to get out of
Yeah.
it?
Every article I write, I want it to be something where it teaches the author the bigger picture and then gives actionable advice on what they can do to see better results. One of the things is that I've seen like a lot of articles out there, and it's just the way that I like to learn. Is I really want to know that if I'm going to get into something, there's concrete actions to be taken. So a lot of our articles don't have a lot of what we say is like, maybe I should at some point, but I've never sat down and said, here's Dave's thoughts about, the industry, or here's my theory about things or so. It's more or less like, hey, here is a very step-by-step process by which on how you can come up with great titles. And it's not just teaching about what goes into a title or what's important about a title. It's about each and every step and all these opportunities and things you should consider as you're building your title so you get the most out of your title instead of it just being kind of this. I thought of a thing, I came up with a thing, and I put the thing, on there. There's actually a lot that really goes into it. And so really that's kind of the way that we like to approach it, the articles and the information that we create.
Would you say that all of the stuff on Kindlepreneur, or I guess most of the stuff, is geared towards indie authors, whether you want to publish through Amazon or not?
Yes. So I started with the name of Kindlepreneur because it's a pretty cool play on words. I do own the domain of ebookpreneur. And so, but I stuck with it because what was funny was I was actually always afraid that Kindle or Amazon would come after me for trademark. And so I was always ready to kind of pivot in case that happened. But funny enough, though, Amazon started promoting my content. As a matter of fact, one time I wrote an article where I broke down the fiction keywords and really how to understand how shoppers go about looking for a fiction book on Amazon's store, right? Well, what was hilarious is that like 1 week after publishing that, Amazon KDP officially promoted that article and literally said, learn from Kindlepreneur on how to optimize your fiction books for more sales. So that was their statement pointing to the article. But then it got even funnier is because 1 week after that, I noticed that they changed their FAQ and they literally just took a section of my article and put it on their FAQ, which it was flattering. It was great. But, so it's kind of, let's put it this way, it'd be really hard for Amazon to come after me now after they have promoted. They can't say, well, we don't want people to get confused. I'm like, yeah, but you guys are telling people, you're calling me Kindlepreneur. So that was kind of funny in its own right. But while really the idea behind the name, though, is that I wanted it to be like authorpreneur, which I don't think I could get access to, but really it's about there's two parts to being an author, okay? There is the art and the writing and the joy that comes from that. And then there's the business side of it. And while you can definitely be an artist and you can do that, if you neglect the business side of it, your book won't get the opportunity to be read, even if it is great. And great books deserve to be read. The other thing too is that if you're hoping that you can just create it and put it out into the world without any type of marketing or understanding, it's playing the lottery, and that's not a knock on it. It's just that the chances that you'll somehow randomly be able to beat everything out there and come to the top gets diminished dramatically. One of the stories I love to tell people about this, and granted, it goes into the publishing world, but there was once this author who she wrote her book and she got her agent. The agent went to all these publishing companies and every one of them rejected it over and over and over. I think it was like 17 rejections. They even changed, her name and made like a pen name-ish kind of thing to hide her gender just in case, like all these things they tried. Finally, the agents went to one of the publishing comptrollers, if you will, and said to him, look, you owe me, read this book and check it out. Okay. I'm pulling that string. Okay. So the publisher took the book, handed it to his like 12-year-old daughter or something, and said, here, why don't you read it? Read the first chapter, whatever. She came back immediately and was like, give me chapter two. He's like, what do you mean? She's like, this is amazing. I want her to keep reading it. Looks down and he's like, Harry Potter. Huh. The fact of the matter is that, and again, I'm not here to push anything about her to promote it, but you have to understand that anybody can probably say it's a very successful book. Okay. Clearly, it had mass market adoption. Clearly, it was done in a way that was wonderful. She wrote it, and yet if they hadn't have pushed through all of those things, if they hadn't done all of these things, we never would have heard about it. It never would have existed. And so I like to tell people, look, one of the most famous, probably biggest money-making books of our time almost was never discovered, but it had all of this backing behind it. Now, the moral of the story is not to say go find an agent that has connections with the publishers. That's the point, though, is that if we do rely on just writing a really good book and we don't bring in the marketing side and all of that push, a thing like Harry Potter might have just disappeared and never reached, the public. And I think that that's why it's very important for authors to really to be both. Now, for those authors that are saying, but I want to go published, okay, I will tell you, you still need to learn the marketing side of it. Matter of fact, I have worked for publishing companies as a consultant. I've sat at the table when they're trying to choose which book to select. And by the way, most of the time they'll choose a number to sign, but they'll only choose a small number inside of that number that they're going to actually work to promote. Okay. But what they're looking at is they're clearly looking at which book gives us the best opportunity to make money. All right. It's not this was the best read. So they're looking at market analytics. They're looking at trends. They're looking at the author and their capability. Do they have a following? Do they have an email list? Do they know what they're talking about? Or is this their first ever and they have no idea? And so it's going to be harder to work with them. All of those things come into play. So whether you are self-published or published, having a marketing understanding the entire aspect is going to be key and pivotal for your kind of growth and movement forward. And so that's why I wanted to call the site Kindlepreneur, or shall we say authorpreneur.
Okay, that makes total sense. And I love that story about J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
Because if she hadn't written those books, then I probably also would not be an author because that's the reason I started writing.
And yet it literally took somebody pulling strings and
Yeah.
pulling teeth. And the
Yeah.
dude didn't even read it. He handed it to his daughter. Like, here, you read it.
So you've developed or are involved with a lot of tools for authors. What would you say are the highlights and which ones get the most use from the indie crowd in particular?
Uh, One of the things I've loved is, I'm a bit of a creative myself, and having access to programmers has been wonderful because as an author, as I'm working on things, I constantly say to myself, "Oh my gosh, wouldn't it be nice if?" And then I'm like, "Okay, let's go build that." So it's been really wonderful in that respect. On Kindlepreneur, we have a couple of free tools that we have. One of them is the Amazon bestseller rank calculator. That's a pretty big fan favorite, where what you can do is you can take the Amazon bestseller rank of any book, put it into the calculator, and it will tell you on average like how many sales a day that book is making, as well as an estimate of how much money that book is making in a month. And so this gives authors a gauge because they can look at other books and kind of see, okay, is this succeeding or not? Is this kind of hot? And so authors can now kind of take interest into other books or even just check their owns as well. The other one that's a really big fan favorite is our book description generator. And so one thing a lot of authors don't know is that when you write your book description in Amazon's KDP, as well as other markets, by the way, you can do certain formatting to make your book description look, bold words, bullets, italics. You can even change font size. But here's the thing, you have to know HTML in order to do that. And oh, by the way, if you're coding HTML yourself and you make a boo-boo, all of a sudden you could have a monstrosity of a book description or get it rejected by Amazon, and that can kind of hurt your book launch. So what we do is we created what's called a WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get. You write your book description in, and then you can click buttons, highlight things, and make it. And what you see right there is how it's going to look on Amazon. And when you like it, you click a button, you get the code, just copy it, pop it in Amazon, and know that your book description is going to look the way you really want it. But it also offers a lot of things that Amazon doesn't talk about. So there's a lot of things you can include and add and build a really good looking, professional looking book description. And we do have a little AI button as well there. In case somebody wants to, they can write a book description and then they can ask our tool, which uses a formula that I've developed over years, where you can click it and say, see if AI can improve your book description. So you take it, click the button, and it will keep your old and it will show the new one. And now you can start to compare and say, oh man, I love that mic drop moment. Oh, I love how they use these words. And you can mix and match and build a book description you can be proud of. So I'd say those are probably the two favorites, on Kindlepreneur.
What are the most underrated ones? Because when I was looking through
Uh,
Kindlepreneur, I noticed that you have a free barcode generator, which I had no idea existed until I was
that
snooping around.
that was so the two ones that are probably the most underrated is yes, the free ISBN barcode generator, which when you need to build one on your back book blurb or if you're submitting to certain markets, you got to have that barcode. And what's funny is there's like a bunch of paid ones out there, and there's some very shady ones, and they require your email address in order to do it. We don't. There it is. And keeping compliant with all the different things that go into it was a lot of fun, but it was a great learning lesson. So I highly recommend. That's probably one of the most fan favorites. That's not as famous. The other one too is the QR code generator. And so what the QR code, for those who don't understand, is it's a little crazy diagram box thing. And if you take your camera on your phone and you look at it, it will allow you to just click a button and it will go to a special link. What people don't know is that box thing is actually a language. So it's not like some random image. Okay. That where those little blips are in the box is almost like think of it like Morse code that spells out the actual link to go to, which is why the camera can read the little box, the Morse code, if you will, come up with the URL. So what's beautiful about this is that when I'm at a author conference, right? And I've got like a business card. I put a QR code on the back of it so that they can just scan it. Some people don't even take my card, they'll just scan it and it will take them to my contact page, or it will take them to my book, or it will take them to, whatever it is. And so we have that. But one of my favorite things that I did on that, which is why it's become a little bit of a fan favorite, is we made it where you can put an image in the middle of the QR code. And the reason why I do this is because I have made the boo boo of putting the wrong QR code in a book. And so what I'll do is that if my QR code is supposed to send people to a book, all right, let's say on my Amazon page, I'll put the cover of the book in the middle. So that way I know it's the right QR code. So don't make the same mistake I did. So that was definitely, as they say in the military, it was written in blood.
That is definitely a mistake that I'm sure a lot of authors have made.
Oh yeah. Well, especially if you did that and then you mass printed like 1,000 copies.
Right? Ugh. Ugh.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
So another tool that you have is Publisher Rocket. I
mhm.
have I have Publisher Rocket and I've used it before to look up keywords and things like that, but I'm not an expert by any means, and I'm talking to the expert right now. But what are some cool things that this tool does that most users don't know about?
Oh yeah. So for those who don't know, Publisher Rocket is a paid program. It's my sixth symphony. I poured everything I know and love into marketing into this thing. And really what it is, it's the tool that before it existed, right? Publishing companies use special reports and data collection, all those things to know what's going on in the market, right? Remember when I said sitting there with the publishing company, they're looking at trends and optimizations and all that jazz, right? So they know what's hot. They know what people are searching for. They know what people want. They know the amount of money that types of books are making and the trends and all that. Well, we poor self-publishers didn't have access to that kind of thing. And that kind of stunk. And so what I did was I built a Publisher Rocket. And so what it does is it will tell you exactly what people are typing into Amazon when searching for books. It will tell you how much money books that rank for that keyword are making. It tells you like how hard it is to rank for it. It also lists all 14,000 Amazon categories, and it will tell you how many sales you need to make in order to be the number one bestseller. So finding really awesome opportunities in categories is stupid easy, like very quick, very nice. But the one feature that I think is the craziest, and it's the one that I had to spend years in developing and years of data collection, is what's called the reverse ASAN feature. What happens is that before we came out with this feature, people would have to go to our keyword feature and they would have to type in ideas and they'd have to work and they'd have to and the system would provide amazing opportunities, but you would have to go through and figure it out. Well, remember that phrase I told you about, right? What if? Well, wouldn't it be nice if I could see what keywords work for other books, right? So what we did was we started actually tracking what phrases books are showing up for, and we started to store that data. So now what you can do is that instead of trying to come up with your own ideas of words, take similar books like yours, put it into the reverse ASIN feature. And we call it that because you take the ASIN number, you put it in, and then it will read all the data. Put it into that feature, and it will just list every keyword that that book has showed up for on Amazon. Now, what's amazing about this is that a lot of people are like, well, are these the keywords that the author put into their 7 KDP keyword boxes? And the answer is we don't know. However, though, I would much rather have what Amazon shows them for than what they intended for. And the reason for that is because they could have asked for a whole bunch of stuff that Amazon disregarded, didn't care, didn't use, or they ask for things that doesn't exist. That's another thing I've seen. I've seen authors waste time by putting like their special character names in there or whatever. Well, Amazon doesn't know what that is and they don't care, so it's worthless. So instead, though, what you get to see is okay, Amazon analyzed the book. Amazon said, we know what this book is, and we know, their input. So we're going to show them for this. Now you get to see what is actually driving them traffic. You get to see what is working for that book. So I love that feature. You put the ASIN of a similar book, scroll through, see which keywords you like, select a couple, start building up your keywords. And what's really cool about this is two things. Number one is you're seeing exactly what works for the other books. So it's like taking the secret sauce out of that. But number two, though, is what we found is that when Amazon sees a lot of similarity in the metadata, okay, so the keywords you're selecting, and they will start to say, oh, these books are very similar. So what you'll end up seeing is your book will start ranking next to them, showing on the also by or similar sections. And so it's one way to really tie yourself next to a book that you want to be associated with. So I love that feature for those two very big reasons.
And that's really valuable for people who are doing rapid release because if you're not
Yes.
getting your metadata right, it doesn't matter how often you release because Amazon's not going to do crap with it if your metadata doesn't
Nope.
work.
The way to look at metadata, and just to include, so metadata, the word itself, it includes the keywords, right? The 7 KDP keyword boxes. It includes your subtitle and your title. It includes your author name. It also includes your book description as well, because they're using all this in the Amazon, I'm going to call it algorithm, but algorithms plural, is using all of the input you put in to kind of figure out your book. Okay. So what the way that I like to explain metadata is your ability to convince Amazon what your book is truly about. Now, if Amazon is confused or it's too broad, it doesn't make sense. Guess what Amazon's going to do? Nothing. They're not going to help you. They're not going to do anything about it. I like to use this analogy, okay? We talk about the digital store. Let's go to a physical store, okay? Imagine that you have your book and you're shipping it to the store, okay? You have a sheet on front, and right on top of the book, and that sheet is where you get to try to explain to the clerk about what the book is about so that you can help them put it in the right shelf, okay? So the clerk gets it and they read it and it says fiction book and it has your name and it has the title and the title's Wiccan and that's it. Very broad information. Okay. Well, this store, let's say it's Powell's. Okay. They have hundreds of bookshelves. They have floors at their bookstore. Okay. That clerk will not know where to go. Maybe it's fantasy. And so but they don't know which kind of fantasy, what is going on here? Where do I put it? Should I put it, next to these books or not? And you know what they're going to do? They're not going to put it anywhere. They're going to go to miscellaneous. They're going to stick it back there. And that's the spot where nobody goes. Okay. Now imagine that because like I said, it says Wiccan. Maybe it's nonfiction. Maybe it's religious studies. Maybe it's fiction, and fantasy. Maybe it's who knows what. I don't know. However, though, now imagine that you actually have a detailed list that really describes the book and tells the clerk, oh, okay, I feel very confident I know what this is. I know exactly where it should go. I'm going to put it there. That is what metadata is. It is that ability to communicate. So if you are too broad and you're not helping Amazon or Amazon doesn't understand what you're doing or it's conflicting, Amazon's just like, "Eh, I don't know. No, are we going to show it to our hungry, ravenous marketers? No. Or shoppers? Probably not. But this book, I know what that is. And I know these people would love that book. I'm going to connect them. That's why it's really important, regardless of whether you're a big name or a first time, getting your metadata is like the ability to help Amazon know what your book truly is about so they know who to show it to. And the more confident they are about that, the more confidently they will show it.
Is it possible to be too narrow with your metadata?
It can be, but I would say maybe not so in fiction and maybe more so in nonfiction. I have seen people in nonfiction spend too much time going too narrow to the point that the book can't reach the broader audience. Like, this is a bad example, but somebody did a book about using an air fryer, right? Air fryer cooking, and recipes and all that. The problem though is that really what they were trying to go with is like because they were a mobile family, right? And they were actually in a mobile home using the air fryer. But the point was is that it was like minimalist cooking capability with an air fryer. The problem is all their metadata was over RVs and mobile homes, and they were focusing on that one thing to the point that they missed the fact that you really are more minimalist. You have the story of you're minimalist because you're on an RV, but really the people that need your book are the ones that are on the go or don't have time, they don't go to the store and get all of the special spices and this and this and this, right? And so it was one of those times they missed out because they went too narrow in the metadata when they could have really understood the bigger, and legitimate existing market that they could have reached. But in fiction, on the other hand, the more specific you are, the happier Amazon gets. What I mean by this is, you could say you're a romance book. Okay, that's pretty broad. Yeah, but here's the thing. Maybe you're a Victorian era, second chance romance, wholesome Christian. Okay. Now we just explained the time setting. Okay. Time period. We explained the real theme to it and even shall we say, the flavor of the romance, right? How on the spicy scale, how spicy here? Wholesome Christian. Okay. Probably not on the spicy. But that is important, right? Amazon doesn't want to show an erotica book to someone who's a Christian wholesome reader. They need to know this. And if you're not giving them those details, well, they're not going to make that mistake. Okay. They don't want to show the wrong thing to the wrong person, especially on certain components. So the more information, the more detail you give, the more they are like, okay, I know what this book is about. Got it. And are there Victorian era, second chance romance, wholesome Christian readers? Yeah, there are. And luckily, Publisher Rocket will produce that information to show you that there is a market that really does type in those phrases. And if you really are aligned with it, you're getting in front of them, which is nice.
I was just thinking that I am probably one of those readers, and I would be looking on Publisher Rocket to find that information.
That is fair.
So another one of your tools is Atticus, and I use Atticus. I love Atticus. I use it for all my books. You recently took on a more hands-on role with Atticus,
Oh, yeah.
and I want to know what is your favorite, what are your favorite things about Atticus, and why should authors be using it?
Yeah. So what's funny is that the concept, the idea of Atticus came about because when I was writing my books, I would use three different sets of software just to write a book. Okay. And I mean, technically, you could almost say five, but I'm not going to count the other two. So I used to use Scrivener to write my books. Okay. Scrivener is a great program. What's funny is I used it for 10 years and I still didn't know how to use half of it. Matter of fact, it's funny is there a buddy of mine sold a course, a $200 course to teach you how to use the software, right? And so, okay, got it. It's a little bit on overkill, but it's a great program. And so writing in it, I'd write. The problem is that when I go to work with my editor, I I can't give him that file. So I'd have to export it. Okay. And then now it's a Word document. All right. Now at this point, what's funny is most editors don't like working in Google Docs. I wish they would, but at this point they want Word because they're used to Word and its layout and everything like that. So I would have to email sections back and forth. Now, I'm pretty sure every author is going to chuckle on this because I would constantly have files that are named final. This is the final, all caps, final, final, final I'm going to publish, final after edit. And after I finally get the version I want, I would then go to a formatting software. Okay. Now back in the day, I used Judo, which, it was a great software back in the day that never got not a lot of attention or love. And so it really fell behind the curve. But it was a way for me to turn it into formatting. And so, anyway, so then I'd have to learn. I had to learn three things. Now, granted, we all know Word. Okay, got it. I had to learn Scrivener, which I never fully learned. Then I had to learn Judo, which was honestly not easy to use at all, but it was better than nothing. It was better than paying somebody to do it. That was the other thing that I ran into too. So here I am. I have to pay for at least two, now three software since Microsoft Word is now an annual subscription. I had to learn those, and then I had version control problems out the wazoo. I always wished I could have one software that actually does it all, right? I could write, I can edit, I can collaborate, and I can format. And now I don't have seven different versions that all say final, and I don't know which one was the one. I might have known at the time that I published, but not after 3 years later when I got to update the back book blurb, or the back copy, I got new books to list, and blah, I wouldn't know which one I worked on. So one of the things that I did was I started by saying, why don't we build that? Now we started with formatting because at the time, Vellum was a very popular book formatting software, but it only worked on Mac. It was also very expensive. And truth of the matter is that many authors have different perspective on what they like to write in. Okay. A lot of little nuances. Some prefer this layout, etc. However, though, everybody has to format a book. So we started on formatting and we built that out where you can easily, effectively build beautiful looking books. And then we really added to the book writing area where you could write your book. So now it's not two separate programs. You can write your book inside of Atticus, and then when you're done writing, you can just start formatting inside of Atticus. And once we got that down, then we worked into collaboration. And so now authors can collaborate. They can bring in another author, and that author and them, they can write together in Atticus and build the book. You can also bring in your editor. And we designed the collaboration with an editor to look and feel just like Word. We interviewed a lot of editors, and I don't mean old by age per se, but maybe like used to in the market kind of people. Can't teach old dogs new tricks, can't teach people who have built their career on one thing a new thing. So we made it intuitive and easy like that and took a lot of credit. So now you can work with your editor without having to leave and losing and trying to track. So I'd say my absolute favorite aspect of that is I finally can write, collaborate, and format inside of, and that's been a really big thing. And we've got even more things we're going to be adding that's going to make that even more exciting.
I just saw the email, I think it was this morning, that dark mode is enabled, and I am very
Yes.
excited for dark mode.
Oh my gosh. No kidding. It's dark mode was one of those where when you go to create features, you really have to work with the authors and make sure that what you're doing really meets what they want. So we had a lot of interviews with authors making sure that the creation of the dark mode was the right way to do it, that the button location made the most sense, that people can control, how they want to see it. And so that's been a lot of fun. Next, very soon, we're going to have a new catalog of drop caps so that instead of just having a couple that you could choose from, you can actually select a whole bunch that really fit your feel and look and make your book look even more unique. And then finally, what's funny is the feature after that is going to be something that our mass users have been clamoring for, which is a file management system inside of the program itself. So you can, let's say you upload a whole bunch of images and everything like that. You can now start to group the images into files that are listed by the book. And also same thing with your books. You can say, hey, here's my series, and I only want my books in these. And so now being able to have like 100+ books inside of Atticus is going to be that much more fun and easy to manage. So we're really looking. There's, like I said, there's a lot down the road. So
That file management one is going to be killer for me because I have unique chapter illustrations, and that's a
yes,
lot of chapter illustrations.
oh yeah. So it's always fun. So, and yeah, like I said, I took on a more active role. I was more in strategy and kind of the top level leadership, and I've taken over more operations to make sure that we're able to hit exactly what it is that we want. I've also worked heavily to expand our team, both in programming as well as in support and in communications as well. And so it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. If there are features that listeners or me would like to see in Atticus, who would be the best person or team to reach out to?
Yeah, our support. So at atticus.io/support. And by the way, our support team is full of authors. We don't hire people to run support that aren't authors. So they understand exactly where you're coming from. It's funny is that they'll hear something and be like, oh yeah, me too. And then what we do is we have a way of collecting that information. And so we have an area where we can go to. So when our programming team will be working on the new thing, we'll be preparing for the next thing. And then we'll meet to go over, okay, what should we plan? And let's go through these things. And what we look at is there's sometimes it's like, all right, that's like a simple couple of days. Let's get that rolling. Or this is like, all right, let's get the team together. Let's walk through and verify everything looks the way it should. Let's also what I call granny test it as well. My code word for it is Muzzy. My grandmother's name is Muzzy. Love her to death. And so what I always say to my team is, all right, can Muzzy use this? Muzzy wants this thing. Is she going to be able to figure out where that button is? And so we do a lot of these kind of fun tests. I call it brain calories, click, click, and Muzzy tests. So my team knows those three phrases like at nauseum.
That is hilarious. Going back to the marketing side with like Kindlepreneur, authors in general want to write more books and spend as little time as possible on the marketing side, myself included. So, what would
Mhm.
your advice be, especially for new authors who want to build a lasting career as an author, on leveraging Kindlepreneur and other tools to help them find balance between life and work?
Absolutely. So the first thing, my biggest advice to authors, okay, this is my favorite piece here, is that when you look at book marketing, there's a million things you can do. There's a million different ways to market. Okay. Where I see authors get the least success and the biggest burnout are the ones that try to dabble in many things and they actually get nothing done. Okay. Dabbling in marketing is not a good use of your time. You either commit to something and truly learn and experience and grow, or just don't do it. And what I mean by that is that like somebody you read a little bit about TikTok, so then you go set up a TikTok channel, and then you try to do a video here and there, while you're also balancing these other 50 other things, right? That TikTok channel is not going to give you any momentum, but you burned a lot of calories. You burned a lot of brain calories. You burned a lot of, time, maybe some money, etc. And yet you never worked with it intentionally. It's kind of like with family, right? You can sit in the room with somebody for hours and it not be that much, but an intentional 5-minute conversation can do so much more, right? And so the same thing goes with that. So what I tell authors is, look, understand the core to self-publishing, okay? So learn about how to format your book, what you can do. Learn about covers, learn about the process of actually uploading. The crafting of your book, the release of your book and the launch of your book, okay? Understand that core. But for your first book, choose maybe two. maybe three marketing efforts, okay, and really dig into those, okay? Learn them, okay? My captain used to tell me that mastery is really called intuition. People who are considered masters just have great intuition. They're able to make better decisions faster. Doesn't mean they're always right, but they could do it. And he said, but in order to get intuition, you have to have experience plus knowledge. So learn and then fail forward and grow and understand it. What's beautiful about that process is the first time you come out with your book, okay, you'll have a couple of good marketing skills under you, and you can build off that. When you go to make your next book, add a couple more. And now you have four, good marketing skills under you. And let that be growth into your author career. There will come a point where that's going to be costly, or like as in like you don't have any more time to be able to do of these things. Hopefully by then that's when you can start to hire a team or to have services provide those, but you'll know what you're looking for, and so now you can make these things more efficient. But that's, if you look at really the scale of authors in their career, it's because they got really good at certain things and they built up their skill sets. And in time, they started really building up their resources, which allowed them to maybe scale, get more people, more services, and it allowed this kind of, shall we say, graph or growth.
Like going all in on a single tool until you see the growth, because a lot of people will go into social media or email marketing and then fall off because they're not seeing results, but the truth is they haven't
Exactly.
stuck with it long enough. Yeah.
That's really the biggest thing about it is, and that's why I like to use that word fail forward.
Yeah.
Like if you're not ready to fail, in the moment, the first sign of failure, you just quit and you turn around and you pivot. You just wasted all that time. Like, let me tell you, there's many failures I had until it started to click. Facebook advertising was one of those things that, it was a little expensive. Like it's an expensive fail forward, right? You spend all this money, but I learned so many critical lessons and now there's like certain things where I'm like, oh, okay, I know what's going to go there. I can do that much better. And so now I can get a Facebook ad to be profitable faster because I have more intuition. But
Yeah.
intuition was built by constantly failing forward and learning, and the two together makes it
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we've talked a high level about the multiple tools that Kindlepreneur has. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to discuss?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, I think the Kindlepreneur itself is a large, shall we say, bastion of information. It allows you to kind of choose your own adventure. But I will say it's very important that authors really get down the process of crafting a good product, okay? Not just your writing, but how you package it, present it, and prepare it. And then after that, how do you launch it and treat it? How should you bring it into the world, into Amazon, into Barnes and Noble, and all these others? Skipping that can be really problematic. If you can't do that well, but you're really good at marketing afterwards, you're going to still have conflict. What I mean by that is you could be the greatest Amazon ads person in the world, okay? But if your cover is confusing or ugly or poorly put together, your ads aren't going to amount to as good as if the cover is solid. So, really understanding the crafting and presentation of your book, I think, is very important.
And also a good product inside the book. So not just the cover, but like if you can be really good at marketing and sell a bunch of copies of book one, but if book one sucks, nobody's going to buy book two.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, you're delivering. Let's go.
All right. So thank you so much for coming on to talk with me. If you have time in the future to do deeper dives on Atticus and Publisher Rock, I would love to have you back. But in the
Absolutely.
meantime, what is the best way for listeners to connect with you or your team online?
Well, if you go to kindlepreneur.com and you scroll down to the bottom, there's the contact me link or so. Hit me up there. If there's any questions about anything we talked about or something's got you stumped or whatever, write it in. I still answer those to this day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. And again, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, everybody. That is it for today's episode. Thanks for joining us. And remember, the first draft is supposed to be garbage. The Novel Writing Podcast is a production of Colleen Mitchell Writes. For more writing resources, including Curios, Tally Inc. author services, and the 60-day novel writing challenge, check out the links in the description.